Are we ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Keep an eye on the participants box in case anybody else shows up. So I don't really have a prayer, but Bruce said if I say amen at the end, that would make it a prayer. I was actually sitting in the bathtub about an hour ago, listening to some um, YouTube videos, and this talk by Ramana Maharshi came up, and I thought, oh, that'd be perfect for the discussion um, on consciousness. And luckily, the number was in the title, so I looked it up. This is from Talks by Ramana Maharshi. If you haven't read this, it's a wonderful book. It's all just question and answer. So this is talk 42. It says, Mr. Duncan Greenlees, uh, Madanda Nepali, that must be where he's from, wrote as follows. One has at times had vivid flashes of a consciousness whose center is outside the normal self and which seems to be inclusive. Without concerning the mind with philosophical concepts, how would Bhagavan advise us to work toward getting, retaining, and extending those flashes? Does abhyasa in such experience involve retirement? Bhagavan answered. He says, outside, for whom is inside and outside? They can be only so long as there is subject and object. For whom are these two again? They both will resolve into the subject only. See who is the subject. The investigation leads you to pure consciousness beyond the subject. Normal self is the mind. The mind is with limitations, but pure consciousness is beyond limitations and reached by investigation as above outlined. And then he goes on to sort of comment on the various terms that Mr. Greenlees brings up, such as getting, retaining, and extending those flashes. Ramana says, getting, self is always there. One seeks to destroy the obstacles to the revelation of the self. In other words, you can't get it because you already have it. Retaining, having once gained the self, it will be understood to be here and now. It is never lost. Extending, there is no extending the self, for it is always without contraction or expansion. And retirement, he says, abiding in the self is solitude, because there is nothing alien to the self. Retirement must be from some one place to another place. There is neither the one nor the other apart from the self. All being the self, retirement is impossible and inconsistent. Abhyasa is investigation into the self. Amen. So, uh, this is a good place to start because the meditation that I'd like to do, a bit of a guided meditation, and it is a way of investigating what Ramana calls the self or the subject. Really, what it is um, a way of trying to look at the subject of experience. And so many of may have done this or tried these kinds of things, but in general, if you see something, an object, for example, that's the object of the experience, and you, whoever is seeing it, whatever is seeing it, is the subject of that experience. And this is true even when you're talking about uh, internal phenomena like thoughts, emotions, the body, and so on. So when you perceive your body, you're perceiving it as an object. And the question then becomes who or what is perceiving it? When you perceive thoughts, they are objects appearing in uh, awareness. And the question is To whom, as Ramana would say, to whom do they appear? Um, so the meditation is an attempt to get you to investigate this subject. Who is the subject of objects, uh, thoughts, the body, and so on. So with that in mind, take your positions. Um, I will start the timer. We'll go for about 10 minutes. And as I said, I'll give you some instructions along the way. So just start by inhaling and exhaling through the nose. Sit upright with good posture. And take a minute to slowly scan the body from head to toe, looking for any signs of tension, pain, discomfort, or unbalance, anything that seems to stick out. And wherever you find tension, on the inhale, breathe into the tension, and on the exhale, allow that tension to relax and fall away. Take note of any mental or emotional tension, stress from the day, and so on. And inhale into any mental tensions. On the exhale, allow them to fall away. Well, let's do a little focusing on the breath. Just follow each inhale and exhale. With each breath, allow the body to become more and more relaxed. Allow the mind to become more and more spacious. Find yourself distracted, just gently return your attention to the breath. Good. Now I want you to observe an external object, something in the room. When you have it in sight, ask yourself, who sees this? Don't try to answer the question with words. Instead, try to see the seer. Right? Now observe your body as a whole. Just take in the sum total of its sensations. And when you have the whole body in the field of perception, ask yourself, who perceives this body? And again, try to perceive the perceiver of it. Okay? Now observe your mind, the present flow of thoughts, emotions, memories, projections. And when you have the mind in the field of awareness, ask yourself, what is aware of this mind? Now, whatever sense you have gleaned of that subject, that seer or perceiver or thinker, that consciousness, just abide in that. If it is a thought, you will find yourself focusing on a thought. That's okay, but you may ask yourself at some point, who is focusing on it? If you find the true subject, you will find yourself nowhere. So just abide in that no place. As we conclude the meditation, don't rush, take your time, uh, and just notice how, although the experience you're having may change, actually, very little uh, changes. Consciousness is still consciousness. The subject is still the subject. Objects are still objects. Maybe we can take a moment before going to the questions and see if anybody wants to make any comments or about the meditation or any questions about it.
I liked it a lot, Matthew.
Good. What did you like about it?
Um, it quickly got me to that place of um, sort of silent presence. Um, and it was interesting at the end, I was saying, oh, I actually wanted to do what you did. We need to ask if anyone has comments. So I started becoming the facilitator, Bruce. And then um, that dropped away, and I went back into the silent presence again. So, how about other folks?
I like I like the question of who's looking at the object and just feeling that sensation of sort of searching for who is looking at that object.
Yeah, yeah.
And who'd you
That's
find, Gene?
I mostly found myself, but I have had a couple of times in my life where I've had a sensation of it felt like someone else was looking through my eyes. So I was sort of trying to find that.
interesting. Yeah, in that in the answer that Ramana gives that I read, this is exactly that investigating the subject, who is it who is seeing that? Um, and interestingly, he goes on to say the investigation into the subject will lead beyond the subject into pure consciousness. And this is the same. If you read Brahmana, you have to kind of parse the way he talks about things, but he will often say to focus on the I thought. Uh, Nisargadatta does this too. He says, keep your attention on the I am. And I think a lot of people I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. So I think a lot of people who hear these instructions um, think they're saying keep your attention on the I am or the I thought because that is what you're looking for. And that's not the case. They're saying if you keep your attention on that, that will lead beyond that to the source. Or as Nisargadatta puts it, he says, you will see that even the I am is unreal or is false. And then you will go beyond. And this is the same with the I thought. Beyond the I thought is the self, what Ramana calls the self. So, but that final leap there's nothing anyone can do about it. So just investigate the subject. Who is the seer, or the basic question, who am I? If you're And you can apply it at any time. Whatever experience you have, you can ask who is experiencing this.
So
You
that's
just
perfect.
you well,
Go on, Alan. Go on.
you just gave me the language I was looking for, Matthew. The
Fruitful
leap,
tangent. Yes.
the leap. So here we go about we're in this duality, and our minds are investigating consciousness, um, awareness, which we could call the observer. We observe ourselves. And what you just said was we slide into that, we slide beyond, we slide beyond into the source. And then you said, but there's nothing we can do about that leap because it's a leap. So all this work or attention of duality and consciousness and non-duality and awareness can't get us there. Can't get us across.
No, no.
So I
Sometimes I feel like
just
I'm tricking people, but I assure you I'm not. But
oh no. This I yeah, so I guess my question to you, since you have made the leap, or maybe you didn't make the leap, but something something shifted, some awareness popped into your physical being. It popped into your dual consciousness, right? It popped into your dual, and maybe there's an emotional component that you feel that when you can somehow be in source, or be that part of you which is, or that part of language, that part of your consciousness or awareness which is aware of, we'll call it you. Is there an emotional component of that? Or,
um, Interesting
there's
question.
my,
It's important to acknowledge that nothing changes. This fundamental awareness that all the great teachers are talking about is your innate awareness. It's just that we become confused and think that it's something it's that awareness is something particular that belongs to the mind and body. And so we identify with the mind and body and say that, and we say it's my awareness, my thoughts, my consciousness, my emotions. So the flow of thoughts and emotions and things like that is, it doesn't, in a way that doesn't change at all. Of course, you may have some extraordinary thoughts and emotions because of that realization, but fundamentally, nothing has changed other than recognizing what is real and what is unreal. And specifically, the thing that really makes a difference is to see clearly that what you think is yourself, what you think is the subject of your experience, is actually just another object in consciousness.
it's a
And
headache.
and then that's kind of what, when Nisargadatta says, you will see that that is false, that the I am is false. In other words, that what you thought was the subject of your experience is just another object in consciousness, like, a pen or something. you know, it's appearing just like everything else. And the same is true of your thoughts. The same is true of your emotions. Those are all things that we become identified with. And when you see that clearly, that everything that you perceive can't be what you are, including your own thoughts, including your own body, including your own mind, then the true subject, or what Ramana calls the self with a big S, suddenly is recognized. But it hasn't been absent at all the whole time. It's just that you didn't recognize it. That's how I would explain it. Ultimately, it can't be perfectly explained. So for me, this happened because uh, the 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 self-inquiry question on my own path manifested as this question: what is my mind and where did it come from? Uh, that was my version of who am I, because I was identified with my mind fully. I thought my mind was what I was. And when I saw clearly that my mind was no different than a tree or a rock, it was just another object appearing in consciousness, that kind of started a kind of chain reaction, so to speak, and that led to realizing, what you could call the true subject or the self.
I'm going to pause you, Matthew, because we're
Thank
hoping
you.
to get more comments before you
Yeah.
share your wisdom. Um, does anyone else have comments about their experience of the meditation or questions?
I For me, it was the first time I asked the question, what is perceiving my body? Who is perceiving my body? And that was difficult to connect with that question. I found it just a deep idea that I am my body in a way. So that was a really new thing for me to do. But like Bruce, the exercise did put me immediately like in a state of silence.
Laura, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, um, for me, I got relaxed, and it seemed like there was nobody there, and it was a sense of darkness, but not an unfriendly darkness.
You're breaking up a little there, Laura.
And then objects appeared again.
Okay. You disappeared for a second. So,
Oh,
yeah, so you said there was a sense of darkness, and then what did you say after that?
oh, well, there was a sense of darkness. There was a sense that there was not a body or a person here, but that didn't last very long. And then the sense of my physical being came back again. But so that I'll stop there.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, if you this teaching that whatever you perceive can't be what you really are. If you take that to heart, it will really lead you, like I said, nowhere or no place. Because anything that you perceive, even if it's subtle, like a subtle sensation or a thought, or um, the more you practice this, the more you will see that even those subtle things are something that you are perceiving, and you will ask yourself again, who is perceiving it? So, good.
Anyone else want to say something?
I'll say something. This is Dave. Um, yeah, I've been exploring this meditation, influenced by Matt, and this time I really felt a sense of the mind, uh, kind of felt like a blocking the ability to sense into the nothingness like this kind of vortex that wouldn't allow this kind of surrender into the nothingness. So that was just interesting. It was kind of, it was actually just very energetic.
Hmm.
Just kind of feeling into that, like this resistance to that. So that was interesting. And I was going to share one thing. I don't. Do you want to comment on that, Matt? Or
It's just very, very interesting. Where did this resistance come from, do you think?
well, I'm labeling it as this mind resistance. Oh, that's territory you're not allowed to go to, says the mind. Yeah, that's what it kind of felt like.
You had a follow-up to that?
Yeah, well, I was just going to add that I was listening to a talk by this teacher, Rupert Spira, recently, and he just helped me look at this statement of I am a little differently. I feel like when I hear the word I, seems like there's always a reference to the mind body.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get beyond that when they're really, it seems like referring to just awareness. And so he kind of had a little statement, just a metaphor. I don't know. He was saying if awareness could say what it is, it might say, I am. And so that helped me shift away from the identification with the mind body as kind of the I in this I am statement to awareness.
Yeah.
And just that real, that it was really helpful. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's a great clarification, I think. It's one of the, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings with these practices, and that's a really good clarification, because otherwise, if you focus on the I thought or I am, and your idea is that I am my mind and I am my body, all you're doing is uh, reifying that which you are meant to actually be questioning. So, so yeah, that's a good clarification. As I always say, because the practice tends to elicit, at least initially, a verbal answer. It's important to say you're not actually looking for an answer. Rather, you're looking for the actual awareness, as you say. What is that? Can you recognize it? Where is it? What does it look like? Yeah, it's good.
Who's next? Okay, maybe we'll go to the carefully crafted questions, which might seem superfluous to a discussion. The first question we sent out was, can you experience awareness without the sense I am aware? We've been sort of talking about that.
A good question.
I think the short answer is yes.
I would, of course, point to deep sleep. No thought appears in deep sleep, and yet there is awareness. And I like to point to this again because it is a good check or a good clarifier on what exactly do you think awareness is or consciousness is. Because in deep sleep, it removes all the objects and the thought up subject as well. In other words, the imagined self or the imagined subject.
So Matthew and I have spent probably hours talking about this deep sleep. I would imagine that some further discussion on that might be, um, if anyone's got questions.
Yeah. What is your experience in deep sleep? Don't be afraid of wrong answers. Just, say what your experience is. There's no wrong answers. There's many different ways to look at it.
Are you trying to say something, Dennis? No, you muted yourself.
Sorry, I did it backwards. Sorry. So my experience with deep sleep is no thing. I don't know anything in deep sleep.
Where are you?
In deep sleep, I don't know.
What are you?
I don't know. I'm no thing, I guess.
Do you come back from nowhere?
Yeah, I seem to every day. It's like kind of like Groundhog Day all day, all my life, you know.
Yeah. Do you exist in deep sleep?
I assume I do
Why do you assume that?
because I come back from it.
Who comes back and who goes away when you fall asleep and when you return? Who is it that goes away and who is it that returns? And who is it that exists when you're not there?
Well, now I would answer all those questions. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, it's good. They're just meant to, again, all these, even these kind of like intellectual um, thinking about these things is also, again, meant to, they're pointers. They're meant to point you toward that consciousness itself. You could say, like in deep sleep, what you have is consciousness. In other words, you you still exist, but there's no content to the consciousness. There's not even there's no body, there's no mind, there's no thoughts, no emotions, there's no world, there are no objects. There's just a pure consciousness without subject or object. And that consciousness that exists in deep sleep exists right now as well. It's just that there's lots of objects that are appearing now and subjects as well. And so, we tend to fixate on the subjects and objects that are the subject of ourself and the world as the object and think that's all that's going on. And that's why, a lot of people, if you ask them, what is your experience in deep sleep? They'll say, well, there's no experience. It's just a blank. And to take, a cue from Ramana in discussing this, he would always ask people that, do you deny that you exist in deep sleep? And they would have to say, no, I don't deny that I exist in deep sleep.
One thing that Matthew advised me to do, and David, I see you raising your hand, is to pay attention to the transition as you fall asleep and as you wake up, particularly as you wake up, as things begin to appear again. So I'm just wondering if anyone else, Matthew has advised that, and you've attempted to really pay attention to how things become enter your awareness in the morning as you wake up.
or disappear as you fall asleep.
Well, if you haven't tried it, uh, do when you wake up. Um,
Clara has her hand raised there. Clara, do you have? Oh,
So I think I have a question. I have tried to do that when I remember in the morning to see what's happening. And I can see how the thoughts start to construct the world. I often don't know where I am when I wake up. And then, but I feel like a desperation to know where I am, like something gets very impatient at not knowing and immediately wants to find an answer. And then I finally, oh yeah, I'm here in this place. And then all the thoughts about the day and what do I need to do start to come back. But I can see sometimes that it's like it start building up. It's not really not comes all of a sudden, but like the world needs to be reconstructed somehow. And then also I have a question about this deep sleep because I have the impression and I don't know if this is deep sleep or not, then that well definitely it feels impersonal. Like I'm not this person there, but there's something that's pleasurable about it. There's a
yeah,
well-being on it.
yeah.
And and maybe that's exactly why there's that
It's
well-being
such,
lie, exactly because it's not personal. But it's this sense of just well-being and rest, which is
yeah. Let me ask you this: all the problems that you have in your daily life, or that you imagine you have, are they there in deep sleep?
uh-uh,
No,
no,
all your problems go away. Even if you have chronic pain, it disappears in deep sleep. Everything falls away. And as you said, how wonderful.
yeah.
And if you've ever had a really bad time of it for some reason, either emotionally or physically, everybody knows this feeling of longing for deep sleep. If only if only I could sleep, just fall asleep for a while. It's such a enormous relief to let go of the mind, to let go of the body, and to let go of the world as well. Interesting what you said in terms of how the world recreates itself. It made me think of how we could do this right now. For example, I want you to watch your mind. You don't know what I'm going to say, and I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to watch your mind and see what happens when I ask you the question. Here it is. What did you have for breakfast? Okay, by now you've probably thought of it, but you had to think it up. A moment ago, what you had for breakfast was not at all in your thoughts or awareness. It wasn't a part of what was going on. Only when you heard the question, suddenly you had to think up, what did I have for breakfast?
So lately I'm having this experience that may relate to that question, which is if I have a memory, right? Doing anything during the day, I remember something or an image come back or a sensation of something that happened. It could be now, today, or years ago. And then I start wondering, who tells me that this really happened? It's happening now in my mind, but there's no proof. I don't know how to say it. Why would I believe this really happened? Maybe it didn't happen. It's happening now in my mind as a memory.
Yeah, yeah. This is good inquiry, by the way. Exactly. Good inquiry. This is exactly what the teachings are telling us to do. Really investigate what is your experience and what can you say is true. What can you really say is true? Not a story that you've been told like about how memory works and this happened before. And I was like, but really say, can I really say that that happened? How do I know?
But would it be true if you said, for example, well, I don't know if this happened, but I know that's happening now in my mind. I know that my mind is
Yes,
projecting or remembering this. This is what happening now.
that's what's
Would that
happening
be
now.
correct
Exactly.
to say that?
That's what it does. It clarifies what you can really be sure of. And it turns out all there is here and now. That's what's happening. That's always what's happening is here and now.
So what I'm thinking, last thing I want to say about the deep sleep thing is that what I'm thinking now is that we often say we think we're awake, no? Like when we start reconstructing this world and the idea of who we are. But in truth, we're maybe more awake when we are in this sleep
Yeah,
than
that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, it turns everything on its head. And by the way, this is true of spiritual teachings in many different ways. If you look at all the great spiritual teachers, and it often takes what people their conventional view of things and flips it upside down or backwards. So for example, saying uh, you're more awake when you are asleep than you are when you're awake because you're not distracted by myriad things. You know, this is it's challenging the conventional way of looking at things. And the teachings often do this in many different ways and on many different levels, and it's applied to many different experiences and things in the world and so on.
David M.
Yeah. So a few things. Relative to sleep, I'm very sleep deprived, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So I'm not thinking real great. Um, let's see, a couple things about sleep. One is when I study my dreams, it's uncanny how they parallel my waking life in kind of abstract, symbolic ways usually, but it's the parallel is quite remarkable. Another thing about sleep for me is I haven't done what you mentioned, Bruce and Matthew, about seeing how the world comes into view. But what I do most mornings is I remember to give thanks to that which kept me alive while I slept. I'd like to do that because I'm all of a sudden um, I'm I'm awake in this dream, and it's a miracle, basically. Quite miraculous. The other thing I do when I first wake up is I don't see how it comes together, but I do things like I go like this first thing when I wake up, and I just it wakes me up into the miracle that my mind body is, that I can actually do this, just this simple thing. It's very complicated actually. And so that's something I do to kind of bring me into the day
Yeah,
in a state of awe, which I like being in that place. So those are a few things.
absolutely.
Um, here's the reason I'm sleep deprived, and I'm really open to thoughts. I'm not sure I want to frame this. It's kind of heavy. So my mother-in-law is dying, and we've been hanging out with her all week. She's been dying all week. She's been unconscious. So she lives in assisted living in North Eugene off Delta Highway, to make it real, in a place called The Springs.
Mm.
And she started dying on Saturday. It was very obvious. She's she's old. She's old. Um, and it was clear she was starting to die. So my wife is one of four daughters, and all four daughters came in. One flew up from California, another one from Portland area, another one Springfield. My wife, we live in Eugene, and um, we were all hanging out with her, very kind of quiet, and so there was some awareness that she had. She was able to she wasn't able to speak, but she was able to nod, and she was able to kind of react and smile a little bit. And then and then things turned on Monday, and I got a call and about 7 o'clock at night, and it was my brother-in-law saying, "Get over here now if you want to be here when she passes." So my wife and I got in our car, went over there, and it was so obvious she was going to pass. It's a little bit comical right now actually because we're all around her bed. It was a beautiful kind of scene. It's one of those things where it's really a beautiful thing. All four daughters are just beautiful people, and it's just love and appreciation and just quiet, just all of that going on. And so it's like it's like she was breathing very slow, and everybody's leaning in, and okay, that's the last breath. And all of a sudden she started breathing again. Everybody's like, "Whoa!" We go, "Whoa!" And that went on for hours. And so my wife and I came home again. Anyway, that was Monday. I was just over there. We were just over there a little bit. I got back for this. Um, she's been kind of like in a coma state since Monday, but she's very much there, and she looks pretty comfortable. We talked to her, but there is nothing coming back. Zero. But she's breathing, her heart's beating, and we're like, "Where are you?" And this is just, I make this up because I don't really know, but I say to like my brother will call from New Jersey. I say, her life force mostly left days ago. But there's a force there. But I don't know where she is exactly. I guess she's somewhere around there. Something's happening. So I'm just kicking that out to the group. We're all of us in the room are on our old spiritual paths, and it's not like we know. It's not like I know, but I'm kind of. It's a very sacred week. I've never experienced anything like this. I've been around death, but not like this.
Mm.
I've never hung out with a person for 5 days who's dying. And she could die in an hour. She could. I get the phone call, or she might. She's not going to live more than a day or two. She's had no water. She's had nothing since Saturday, so she can't live that much longer. Um, but this, by the way, just to say, the scene is really beautiful. I mean, people are, we're all. Acceptance happened a long time ago, and so when she finally passes, there'll be another moment of, wow. Um, but it's quite a beautiful scene over there. But it's like, where is she? Like, where is what? So I'm just kicking that out. Um, and if anybody wants to share anything, I'd appreciate hearing from you because I'm just playing with it in my own mind. I'd love to hear some other minds enter the my life, I guess.
Thanks so much for sharing that, really. So,
David, I've done that a couple times with my mother and my mother-in-law, um, and my father, who passed a week ago, much more unexpectedly, or a year ago rather. Um, what I would ask you to pay attention to is where is your mother-in-law now, but and then where is she just after she dies, and to notice for me the difference between holding my mother's hand as she was dying and that irregular breathing. You kept wondering, is that the last? And then the immediately after, um, I felt my mother was there until her last breath, and then it felt like she was gone. And that body was not my mother at all. And it was a beautiful, beautiful moment, like you described. We had a week with her. So it is a beautiful time to spend together.
Thank
So
you.
then, Bruce, would you say that her consciousness was there until that last breath, and then after the last breath, the consciousness left?
I guess if you want to call it consciousness, she was not interacting with us. She hadn't talked for several days, um, but uh, there was a presence, and then it was gone. There was a life energy, a life force, and then it was gone. And so we can call that consciousness, yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious if to hear, Matthew, what you would think is consciousness and soul connected.
mm. You know, a lot of these questions come down to how we define words. And so, it depends on how you're using the term consciousness. And people seem to use it in a lot of different ways. So there's a lot of room for confusion around the idea of consciousness. We say, like, when you're asleep, for example, we say we're unconscious. And when we're awake, we say we're conscious. If we're in a coma, we would say we're unconscious. And when we're walking around, we say we're conscious. And we talk about individual consciousness as like the mind. But at least in spiritual teachings, we also talk about consciousness itself, which is impersonal. It's not individual or partitioned. It's just, as I often call it, reality itself. And so, one can think about the spiritual path as the dissolving of the individual consciousness into reality itself or into the universal consciousness. And so, whether or not, I guess, I would say, with regards to this subject of consciousness, ultimately, I would say consciousness is all there is. So movements within it, the coming and going of various beings within it, is all happening within consciousness itself. But consciousness itself is uninterrupted and unchanging, regardless of all the comings and goings of various things and beings. So, this is why these this investigation into what is your own consciousness is, I would say, at the heart of the spiritual path, because that investigation leads to this uninterrupted, unending, unborn, undying consciousness.
For me, when I'm in a deep place, it's kind of like uh, it's like consciousness is aware of itself. That's
Observes
pretty
yourself.
much it.
Yeah. Say more.
Um, well, there is no subject and object, and there's an awareness that that cat over there is me.
Yeah.
That tree over there is me. That there's not, well, it's obviously non-duality, but it's
Yes,
just
yeah.
it's it's just I'm conscious that the whole thing is happening within my consciousness. That there's no that there's that where else could it be happening? It's there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's nowhere to go. Where would one go?
There's nowhere to go. There's
Exactly.
absolutely, it's the whole sensorium is happening within my consciousness.
And
There's
if you try to
nowhere to go.
figure it out, like to construct, like how does this all work? It becomes like a hall of mirrors.
Hmm.
When in reality, it's very simple. It's exactly what you said. It's just uh, consciousness aware of itself.
So Bruce, I just want to play with a little bit. I appreciate what you said, and my what I'm kind of perceive this is just my perception with my mother-in-law is that it's almost like when I read about near-death experiences where people are outside of their body looking at it, that
Mm.
their body maybe isn't gone. And that's how I experience it. It doesn't feel like she's really, I mean, there's something happening in her body, and obviously there's a force in there, but it doesn't feel like she's really there. That's what I'm playing with. And I kind of like that because she wasn't there anyway at some
That's
level.
I'm glad you brought up that question because that's the question that's pertinent to us all at whatever stage we are in our lives, be it now or on our own deathbed, is where am I now? And am I really here? Am I is what I am experiencing what I think it is? Or is it more like a dream appearing in consciousness itself?
Mona,
Yes. Hello, everybody. I've been having an experience on the other end of life where I became a grandparent for the first time about 11 weeks ago, and our the baby and our daughter is in Portland, so I wasn't really present for all of those weeks. But through her conversation with me, I have been also seeing this process of the newborn and consciousness and that experience of our daughter, her mother, sort of not having had a lot of experiences with those first weeks of life. And I think she had some certain expectations that she was quite surprised that this newborn uh, couldn't really be considered present a lot of the moments. Uh, Sort of like someone who's in a coma at the end of life, that same questioning of, she would roll her eyes, or uh, she would open her eyes as if she was here, and then she would immediately be back in sleep. So my daughter was really wrestling with, I don't know what this is. It's
Mm.
almost like she was sort of expecting this baby to be more like the 6 months olds that she has had experience with. She's babysat before. But she said this in and out of consciousness, and you can't even, she says, I can't even call it that. She's just floating in whatever she's taking in terms of sounds that might be happening, or light, or sensations of touch, or nursing, or whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to share it.
Yeah, no, that's
It's also part of the whole newborn experience.
yeah, it's wonderful how you connect the two as well. And yeah, with no, the newborn has no sense of individual consciousness. It's not, it doesn't make any distinctions, either distinctions between before birth and after birth, nor between self and other, nor between subject and object,
Or even waking and sleeping.
or even waking and sleeping. Exactly. No distinctions at all. Yeah.
So I've been having a different experience of this newborn than my daughter has. I've shared a little bit with her, but she's got her hands full and her nights full.
Did it concern her at all, or
No, I think it just surprised her that her expectations weren't anything close to what life with a 3-day-old or a 1 week old or a
Yeah.
3 week old. It's like she's she's along for the ride, but now of course the baby is smiling at her and starting to laugh, and their relationship has come along just fine. But my spiritual understandings were what was living sort of in me as I experienced the baby and our daughter.
Alan Watts gives some nice talks about how, I mean, he likens awakening to like returning to this newborn kind of experience, except, of course, you have all of your uh, experience and adult mind in play.
Yes.
But all of those distinctions that through your life you slowly took to be real, the distinction between self and other, the distinction between waking and sleeping, the distinction between before birth and life, or life and death, all of those distinctions that you slowly through life learned about, projected onto the world, and took to be real, all those distinctions collapse.
Or for a new parent, and she's an older parent, she's not, 19 or 22. Our daughter is just now beginning to realize that she's going to have a critical part in this new human being's life of helping her to kind of create those distinctions.
Yeah, yeah.
I also thought about the book titled Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind,
Yeah,
and what you were just saying
yeah.
about there's no distinctions. She's in a beginner's mind. The
True
baby's in a
beginner's mind.
beginner mind place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the end can be a lot like that too.
Yes.
My mom has Alzheimer's, and I definitely, things are changing. You can see certain uh her experience has changed, her personality has changed somewhat, and yeah, she has a different view on the world.
Mhm. And sometimes it's really fun to be in that world with her, moment to moment,
Yeah,
whatever arises for her. I know my mom had dementia. She didn't have Alzheimer's before she died, but she had dementia, and I saw some of my siblings trying to like hold on, uh, almost like pressure her to hold on to her brain, by saying, "No, Mom, that isn't what happened," blah, 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 blah. And I go, it's okay.
yeah, it's all right to let
It's
go.
like,
Yeah,
it's okay to just go with her, whatever, just go with it.
yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah, ultimately, it's a good lesson for everyone. It's okay to let go.
Mhm.
Any other comments?
Can I say something about it?
Absolutely.
So now that we were talking about these things, I remember, I think it was Ramana who said when he was dying, I think it was him, and all his students started to get really sad because he was dying. I think it was him who said, because they were saying, "You're gonna leave us, you're gonna go," and he said, "Where do you think I'm gonna go? Where could I go?
Yeah.
I will be here." But I also, regarding to what the conversation about dementia and Alzheimer, and just remember my mom, she lived many decades with chronic pain, and the last, I think, year of her life, it was quite quite hard, quite tough. She couldn't move, she couldn't talk, but at some point, I believe she stopped experiencing the pain. And I think the pain was gone because she was not remembering who she was and the idea and the history of the pain and the history with her body, she started having cognitive problems. It was not dementia or Alzheimer. It was another kind of disorder, but I was surprised because before she couldn't stop talking, but the cognitive thing were starting to be there. We noticed the pain was gone. And I actually attribute that the idea of herself and the history were changing, and therefore she didn't have the pain anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, so much pain, and arguably all of it is actually just a bundle of thoughts. Um, so yeah, I could see that completely. It's certainly when we experience something painful, it feels like this much, for example, and we think it's this much, but actually this much of it is just thoughts. You know, and if those thoughts go away, all you're left with is this much, and you're suddenly it's not a problem at all. So that's my experience anyway with pain, and it can be quite startling when you realize 1 minute ago you thought something was excruciatingly painful, and instantaneously it can be not even almost pleasant. Um, and so much of it is just psychological. Fear, projection into the future, projection into the past, and a whole bunch of thoughts related to those projections. Negative, a lot of negative thoughts, how is it going to affect me? Am I going to deal with this, my whole life? Is this ever going to go away? Is it going to get worse? On and on and on. Like so many thoughts come to mind.
So I worked for hours on these questions that I sent out, and we've gotten to the first one, which had a second part to it. Um, so, in the interest of making my ego feel good, that I didn't waste all those hours,
We'll listen to him, Bruce.
we'll go to one more question.
Okay.
Um, and I think I'm going to go to the last one. Um, I was going to ask what exists outside of consciousness, but probably Alan is going to say nothing, and we'll all know he's right. So uh, I'm going to go to the last one. Have you ever experienced communication with a non-embodied entity, a spiritual being, a deceased person, telepathy with a living person, or an unknown entity, such as an alien or an angel, and I'm asking this because it is, in fact, remarkably common that we experience these things. And we often probably say, eh, that's nothing. That's my imagination or something.
Or
And
nothing I
sometimes,
should tell anyone about.
or yes, nothing. But something like 50% of Americans, when asked, report that they have had a communication from a deceased relative that felt very real and personal and clear. Um, so, as we think about consciousness, um, and if we think that consciousness is not just mind-based, do we think this is possible and real, and have people experienced this? And if so, what's your story? Who has experienced this? Raise your hand.
50%.
So, Dennis, David, Claire, I think you raised your hand. Dennis, what was your experience?
Well, I've done some pretty powerful hallucinogens in the past, and ayahuasca was among them, and so I've in my trip experience, I've spoken with uh, uh, God, and it seemed very real. But in retrospect, uh, I'm firmly convinced that we are God, and 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 so I feel like when I have a uh, this kind of an experience now, it's me talking to myself, and so I think that's what my takeaway is.
Hmm. David, David M.
Oh, well, um, I mean, it's pretty endless. My line of teachers talk to me all the time. I have constant connection with Paramahansa Yogananda and his line of they're my guardian angels, and it's real, and they're constantly guiding me. So they communicate with me consistently. So I just want to say that. I also had an interesting visit from my father through a dream that was very, very powerful and real. And I'll never forget that one. So, getting visited that way, but it's a daily thing. If I'm awake, that I'm getting guided constantly by guardian angels are all, the universe is full of guides for us. It's super clear to me. Just pay attention, and they're all over the place. Thank God. Because I wouldn't have a clue. I need the guidance. I couldn't come up with this stuff. If I was like if I was like thrown on the planet with no teachers, I couldn't come up. I'm just totally grateful for I mean I can take no credit for anything, really. So anyway, that's yeah.
It's interesting you say that because when I first started meditating at 17, um, without having any um, really teaching or anything, I felt like there was what I call a disincarnate entity guiding me. And for forever, I felt like, that then started when I started reading Buddhism, a disincarnate guru. But I understand what you say about entities guiding us. And hmm. Claire, you were going to say something.
No, I wasn't going to say something. I have no doubt actually about the reality of things that we don't see with these eyes here, and that I also experience them constantly, and that I wouldn't even know where to start talking about it because I have them of so different kinds. But for me, it's an absolutely reality. I can't doubt that there's from teachers that teaches, sometimes communication with people that have have died, um, to telepathy, to all those things I've experienced always in some, can't remember. So for me, it's as real as any of you guys. Meaning, probably Matthew would say nothing is real, but I don't
No,
know.
it's funny
I don't
that you
know.
say that, Clara, because on this subject, that's exactly what I would say. I would say, when people have these kinds of experiences, some people like you are uh, don't have any doubts. Other people may have doubts. Was that real? Did I just make that up? And there's this whole kind of like questioning that goes on about what is real and what is not real, which is interesting. Because one of the things that these experiences do is they push us into inquiring into what is real and not real. And I would say, in a way, exactly as you did, I would say these experiences, if you have them, are as real as what's happening right now. The question is, how real is that? So you have to question it. You have to question everything. Ultimately, you know, in a from a non-dual perspective, real and unreal, this distinction goes away. So you're not making, I'm not making a judgment saying the world is unreal. I'm not saying it's real. I'm not saying it's unreal. I won't say because I want people to see that, to really see it. If you really see whatever is going on in front of you, it's just what is. You can't call it real or unreal.
Mm.
And if you've never had this kind of experience, I would say don't despair or anything like that. Inquire into the experiences you have had. For example, have you ever had a dream in which somebody in the dream told you something that surprised you? Well, who's telling you that? Did you ever have a thought pop into your head that you don't know where it came from? Where did it come from? We're actually constantly having extraordinary experiences. It's just that the ones that happen a lot, we tend to call them ordinary and then just say, well, that's just how things are. And we discount the true miracle of everything that's happening.
And this true miracle of this Zoom is coming to a conclusion. Um, if if you like tonight's discussion, raise your hand. And I thought it was really good. So thank you all for sharing, and thank you, Matthew, for your wisdom. Thank you, Bruce, for helping to organize this, whoever that is. And we really do benefit, or I will say I benefit from these discussions. And it's a gift that Matthew and all of us get together to do this. So let's send the blessing of this out to Mona's new baby or grandbaby, and to David's family, and to his mother-in-law, and may her final transition and the family's joy in that spread out, and may all of us put our energy out into the world in ways that make positive differences.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you, Bruce, for that beautiful blessing. Be at peace, and peace to you all until next time. Have a wonderful week. It was great seeing you all.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, thank you.
Very grateful. Thank you all.